Hi guys, so I've had my first game of 8th edition with the old Eldar Coven, so I wanted to just have a quick chat really. Right then, so here's the army that I took. If you haven't seen the last video, don't ignore it. The points were all wrong, so I hadn't taken into consideration that these guys need their war gear, because I just didn't realise. I hadn't read the books properly. But I redid it, and we played a game of 600 points to get used to the rules, which went fairly quickly, which these performed really well in, although I didn't take any of these big fellas. He's wobbling a bit because he's magnetised in lots of different places. That went really well, and then we played 1100 points, which is basically all that Harry had. Harry from Tabletop Banter. If you haven't seen those guys, go ahead and have a look, because they put out some pretty cool videos. Sorry, I'm waffling a bit here. So in the second game, I was able to take all of my toys except for one of these raiders in the back here. I left one of these off, but the rest were on the table, and it was good. It was good fun. The game plays brilliantly. I really enjoyed it. I'm just going to show you these as I talk. Really enjoyed it. It's a lot faster paced. We played a 1100 point game in about an hour and a half, and that was with looking up a fair bit of the rules and sort of making sure we weren't doing things the 7th edition way. That's going to pass really quickly, I reckon, because like I say, it went really quick. So, let's have a chat about the Dark Eldar and how they did. Pick this fella up. Now, I made a big mistake, and I threw the 3 Grotesques, the Kronos over here, and these 2, and a Homunculus, into 5 Custodes, and Celestine and her 2 chumps. And it did not go well. That's all I'm going to say. It took 3 turns, but basically they killed everything they went up against. And I think the Grotesques managed to kill a Custode, and the Kronos was killed to shooting before the combat even started. That was my fault. I was a bit trigger happy with the old Flamer, which, incidentally, I'm not entirely sure where the Flamer comes from, but I'm sure it's somewhere on this thing. So that was not great. So I didn't really get to see the full potential of the Kronos. These guys I did get to see the full potential of. They were doing okay. There was wounds being caused and all sorts. Now, I found a cheaper way to run these compared to the default build. Of course, the default build is these 2. So 2 of the macro scalpels. And on the top here, you're supposed to run 2 splinter cannons. Couldn't remember the name there for a moment. So that's the basic build, and that comes out to I don't know, 220 something points, I think. Anyway, if you take the splinter cannons off there, which is 30, and you put on this here, this is 26. So you're already saving points there. And then with the extra, because these are actually not the cheapest weapons available, you put an Ichor injector on there, you can start causing some mortal wounds. I was finding that mortal wounds weren't great, to be honest, in terms of the output on here, because you can only use the Ichor injector once per fight phase, or at least you can only use it one of his weapons can be the Ichor injector. The rest of them have to be other attacks. And I was just incapable of rolling 6s, and that's how the Ichor injector causes the mortal wounds, which was a bit of a shame. So that's those guys. I think I'm going to run these with the splinter pods, sorry, the stinger pods. And the reason I've gone for stinger pods, I didn't explain that, did I? The reason I've gone for stinger pods is because they can output strength 5, 2d6 strength 5 shots, up to 24 inches, which is a fair range. And it's a lot of shots to output. And the good thing about strength 5 is that if you're hitting anything under that, you're hitting on a 3, which is already better than poison. And strength 5 can actually be a bit of a threat en masse to vehicles. So there's not many vehicles, I don't think there's any vehicles that are actually strength 10. So you can guarantee that these things are always hitting on 5s. So there's that. They are a threat, especially when you're putting 2d6 of them out from each of the Talos. So there's that. One thing I found that I'm going to go through about the racks. Now the racks are brilliant in hand-to-hand combat against basic troops. They just chew through anything. Each one of them does 2 attacks. They're hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s because of the poison, and they really do the job, to be honest. Just through weight of numbers that are coming out of these guys in terms of hitting stuff. So that was quite good. Now I wouldn't put them up against anything elite. I avoided putting them against the Custodes after I'd learned what they were capable of, because I knew they'd just get chewed up. If these guys can get chewed up by them, these wouldn't stand a chance. Now, the bit that I'm not sure about, if I can just find him, in here, there's a hex rifle. So, in my last video I was ranting and raving about hex rifles, and of course the reason I like the hex rifles is because they've got AP, basically they've got AP -1, and they're sniper rules, so they're basically designed to pick off characters, and the only problem with that is that AP -1 isn't really up to the job when it comes to characters. And to be honest, my rolling is absolutely awful. So I'll be taking these off, potentially, and replacing them with something which is a little bit more reliable for my incredibly bad luck, which is some liquefier guns. Let me just find a liquefier gun. I've got one in here, I know I do. There we go. Here's one with a liquefier gun, that little fella there. Now I'm tempted to put the liquefier guns on these as well instead of the Ichor injector, because basically it's flamer, so D6, only 8 inches, but all of this stuff wants to get up close anyway, and you can do it out of the transports as long as you're not these fellas. These guys as well can take liquefier guns. Basically everything can take liquefier guns in this army, and because the transports carrying them, they're firing liquefier guns as well. It's absolutely mental, but that's only the Coven stuff that you're seeing here. So the liquefier gun outputs D6 automatic hits. It's only strength 3, but it's AP dash. So even if you're hitting on 5s for a lot of stuff, you're getting some crazy AP in there. So all you need is just to get some wounds in, and even the hardest stuff like the Custodes I was dealing with are going to start taking wounds. So that's the plan there. Now, when I ran these, I actually ran 2 squads of 5 in a single raider, which that's something you can do now in 8th, which is awesome. And that means you can basically run 4 special weapons, because your Akathist, which is basically a sergeant for Dark Eldar, can run with a hex rifle or a liquefier gun. The only thing you can't take is an ossifactor, which is this here. This weapon on the side, which is designed to take out some pretty hefty stuff as well, which I'll probably keep. I'll probably keep some of these, and everything else might be getting the old liquefier guns. But anyway, yes, so you can put 2 squads of them in there. So each one's going to have an Akathist, and each one of them's going to have a model that can take another weapon, which can be an ossifactor, or it can be a, I think it's a liquefier gun. So you can potentially have 4 liquefier guns in a single raider, which is absolutely nuts. If you get that raider anywhere near your opponent, that's 4d6 automatic hitting shots. It doesn't even bear thinking about, does it? So that's pretty cool. But I'll probably keep the ossifactors, because basically they are hitting on 3s. They're an assault weapon, and it's the equivalent of Fleshbane, so wounding on 2 pluses. And then it's AP -3, so these guys can really hurt as well. They don't have the sniper rule, but from what I've seen of the sniper rifles, I'm not going to miss that much. Let's be honest, my opponent's going to be a lot more grateful that I don't snipe his characters from the off anyway. So that's my thoughts on the racks and how I'm going to run those. The rest of the unit has to be basic, guys, but I'm really enjoying the fact that I can put 2 squads of 5 in a single raider and just cause some serious havoc. Really, really liking that idea. These guys can take all those shenanigans as well. What else did I want to cover? Ah, yes, these guys. So they hit really nicely, to be honest. They have monstrous cleavers, which that's a bad one to use. In fact, all three of these don't really have the cleavers on. Some of the models I've done, they have cleavers as opposed to the just random stuff like you're seeing there. And then they have the flesh gauntlet as well. One of these can take special weapons. I didn't realise. So one of them can be taking all sorts of funkiness. One of the weapons is Scissor Hand, which is re-rolling wounds. I really like the idea of that. So potentially I'm going to give one of them the Scissor Hand. And I'm tempted by the idea of having liquefier guns, like I say, on all of these, because I think that would be absolutely mental. They're not going to lose their shots, because models tend to not care in 8th edition whether they've got 2 to get the bonus. Some weapons do give an extra 1. For example, the macro scalpels do here. So if you have 2 macro scalpels on a Talos, instead of doing 4, it's going to be doing 6 hits at strength 6, which is pretty cool. So that's good. Oh, another option I can be doing on here, I need to play with all these options to figure them out, is you can take chain flails on, because I've magnetised these, I can swap it all out. Take chain flails on one of these, and then the macro on the other. So you know, as long as you hit with one of these, you can get an extra attack. So basically, my thoughts are you take the macro scalpel and the chain flails, and what the chain flails do is they hit at normal strength. So instead of poison, they're hitting at strength 6. So that's better in that respect. And they let me re-roll wounds. Now this goes back again to my inability to hit anything with single rolls. So if you just imagine, I've got these 2 raiders here. They played in 2 games last night, and one of the lances actually did any damage at all. They were always firing every single round, and I only hit once and actually did some damage once. I think I hit a couple of times and then didn't do any more wounds. But yeah, so I'm going to be replacing those. In fact, that's a good opportunity to talk about it. I'm going to be replacing the Dark Lancers with Disintegrators. So again, this harkens back to Strength 5, which is something we spoke about a moment ago with those guys. They output 3 Strength 5 minus 3 AP shots. So they're threatening vehicles, they're threatening monstrous creatures, all sorts. I mean, they're going to be hitting on 5s, but again, as long as you get those wounds through, which I need to roll lots of dice to do apparently, you're going to be getting those wounds, because I've found that saves can be quite excessive in Age of Sigmar. If you're inside a ruin, or rather the target's inside a ruin, they've got a 2-up. Essentially they've got a 1-up. So an AP of 1 takes them back to 2-up. So you really need to pile it on, to be honest, to get them working. So that's my thoughts essentially. Like I say, these guys, I didn't take much shooting, but they do a fair job in close combat. But they're nothing to phone home about, to be honest, unless you start taking electro-corrosive whips, which I think are 2 damage and minus 2 AP. So I'm going to have a play with those sorts of things, maybe some of the different gauntlets they've got the ability to take. They do 5 attacks, so that's fairly good. But I think I was playing them completely wrong. I was keeping the raiders fairly far away, because I was trying to use the sniper rifles and the ossifactors from the racks, which was counterintuitive to the way the army works, to be honest. So I think by taking the liquefier guns, trying to get within that 8 inches, I can mitigate that point and get everything in nice and close. The 5-up that the whole army gets, including the vehicles, a 5-up invuln regardless, was helpful in the first game while I had some luck behind me, but in the second game I was incapable of rolling a 5-up and then the following 6-up from the Power from Pain. So that was an absolute pain. I was also forgetting on turn 3 that these guys get +1 to hit rolls, so that would have been a massive help as well. But yeah, you never know. I think I've rambled on far too long, so basically that's my thoughts from my first game of Dark Eldar. I've got some new stuff to try. I've got Disintegrators on these guys. I've got liquefier guns all around. And yeah, just basically liquefier spam. And I've got some funky war gear to try out on the Talos as well. Right then, that's what I wanted to cover. Just move that out of the way. Yeah, I enjoyed the game a lot, and I really enjoyed playing with these guys. I just need to figure out the nuances of the new edition. One thing I did find is that maybe it was because I was against Custodes and Saint Celestine. The Talos don't hit anywhere near as hard as they used to. So that's something to take into consideration. They're not the beasts in close combat that they used to be. Or rather, they might just be just as beastly, but other stuff now is just mental. Or maybe that maybe it's that I was out of 7th for long enough that stuff was just piling up and getting more and more strong with power creep. I don't know, because Custodes, as far as I'm aware, are fairly new models. Right. Yeah, that was it. If you've got any questions or suggestions on the Dark Eldar Coven, again, I'm taking Coven because I'm driven by theme and fluff, and I absolutely love the fluff. I love the way they look. I love the models, and that's the way I wanted to take them. I'm going to try and convert my raiders to have racks flying them, so that'll be pretty cool. And I worked it out, I've got nearly 3,000 points of Dark Eldar Coven. There's like 7 Talos that can also become the old Kronos and whatnot. So yeah, lots of options and a lot of points I can take to mix it all up. Right then, that's what I want to talk about. Like I say, let me know down in the comments if you've got any comments, questions about how it went, anything at all. Just fire them down below. Right, thank you very much for watching. Keep it with me in between videos, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Stay well, guys.